Intro noises. I am Rose Knight. I have a problem where I hyperfixate on things. You probably could have guessed that considering that this is the third Hollow Knight video in a row on a channel with only 3 videos. But this time it's not even my fault. I had a poll on my Kofi page a little while ago with 3 different projects listed that I really wanted to work on. And yeah, I figured it would be a relatively even split, and I'm not entirely sure what the majority of people are looking for in their games, but oh no. This is gonna take a long time. Today, we're going to be starting a brand new project where I convert the Hunter's Journal from Hollow Knight into D&D 5th edition as a new monster manual. If you'd like to follow along with me as I explain the stat blocks, you can download everything you see here absolutely free over on my Kofi page. Links in the description. If you've read the title of this video, you probably already guessed that I am not doing the entire Hunter's Journal in one video. That would literally take me over a year to finish. We're not doing that. What we're going to do instead is separate all the Hunter's Journal entries into where they are on the map, and I'll be chipping away at it little by little in no particular order until it's done. And just to set a few expectations, I am not going to adapt every single Hunter's Journal entry. If we're being honest, some of them aren't very interesting, and you can definitely just get away with substituting a pre-existing monster stat block from the regular monster manual. That being said, I will be adding in stat blocks for a few NPCs that don't end up in the journal, so hopefully that evens out in the end. With all that being said, let's begin our journey through the land of Hollownest. And since we're in the Halloween season, and since we're in the Christmas season, we'll be starting with Deepnest. To start things out, I'm going to be explaining my personal interpretations of the Hollow Knight lore as it pertains to the creatures I'm writing about, just so we're all on the same page, since this game leaves a lot up to interpretation. If you're not interested in hearing that, I completely understand, and you can skip to this timestamp here. But for everyone else, Deepnest. Deepnest is defined by its gloomy atmosphere, its dark rooms covered with thick layers of web. The area is difficult to navigate, featuring twisted maze-like tunnels, sometimes with only the dim glow of bioluminescent mushrooms to light the way. Deepnest lacks the same level of infrastructure as the rest of Hollownest. The area is comprised almost entirely of dark passages and tunnel networks dug by its inhabitants. At the westernmost point of the area is the Distant Village, a settlement of suspended web structures, and at its center is the Beast's Den, holding the sleeping body of the Queen of Deepnest, Hera the Beast. It's honestly fascinating. To get to the Distant Village, you would need to fight soul and nail with some of the game's most aggressive enemies attacking you, all while avoiding pit traps and ambushes along the way. But what's interesting about this location is that there are no directly hostile creatures anywhere once you get here. Nothing that will attack you anyway. Once you make it here, you'll eventually come across its residents, the Distant Villagers, who will see that you're tired from your long journey and will offer you a respite. Honestly, this is the perfect trap. You just got done fighting for your life past hordes of spiders, and now these well-intentioned bugs, if a little creepy, are offering you a seat. I don't know about you, but I was practically begging for a bench by the time I got here, and that's exactly what they were counting on.
No, 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 no! Wait!
After the screen fades to black, and we hear some terrible monster noises, we awaken to find ourselves okay. Sure, we're tied up, but we're alive. But what were those noises? And why didn't the Distant Villagers eat us? What, are we not good enough for them? Well, here's my theory of what happened. The Distant Villagers set you up from the start. From the moment you entered Deepnest, you were already in their trap. I believe the Distant Villagers are setting up all the traps around Deepnest, and that's how they're surviving. Since they haven't succumbed to the infection, they don't have their instincts to rely on, which means they need to be clever and risk-averse when they hunt. That explains where all the traps are coming from, and how the Distant Villagers are feeding themselves. But what about why you ended up in the Beast Den? Well, I think the Distant Villagers aren't just feeding themselves, they're also responsible for feeding Hera. Anytime a creature is strong enough to make it all the way to the distant village, the villagers trick them into a web instead of throwing them into a spike trap to preserve their freshness, I guess. The sound we hear is the sound of them opening the entrance to the Beast Den, and the personal guards of Hera, the Stalking Devout, are roaring out to frighten away any would-be attackers. The villagers leave the worthy morsel for their queen, Or maybe the Stalking Devout themselves who chose to be sealed with the Queen, since we don't actually know if the Dreamers need to eat or not. I think that makes the most sense as to why Deepnest is set up the way it is. It also explains why, after breaking Hera's seal, essentially killing her, the distant villagers are nowhere to be seen. All that's left of them are their masks littering the floor. I think they lost hope after their queen died, so they abandoned their disguises, their homes, and their traps, which never get reset, leaving the spider tribe and weavers to go completely feral. Not that that looks any different from what they were already doing to the night. At the very center of Deepnest is the Weaver's Den, which bears a unique architectural style, evidence of the Weaver's foreign origin. We know that the vast majority of the Weavers left for their homeland once the infection started to take hold in Deepnest. What's weird is the ones that stayed behind. After being infected, they seem to shrink down and lose most of their silk spellcasting abilities, which is the complete opposite of what happens to basically everything else, which all seem to get bigger and more powerful. The little weavers can seemingly fly, although according to the Hunter's Journal, they're just moving across thin strands of silk. But come to think of it, out of every other creature in Hollow Knight, little weavers are the best at stealth ambush tactics. They literally appear out of nowhere before attacking, almost like they're able to use their invisible thread to obscure themselves until they're within striking distance. Food for thought, I guess. Moving on. If you head to the top of Deepnest, you'll find your way to the abandoned tram station. Not only is this evidence of Deepnest's isolationist tendencies, as shown by the fact that they destroyed the only way for outsiders to get into their territory, it's also the home of the worst infestations in the game, the Dirtcarvers. I genuinely believe that if the Dirtcarvers had infested any other area of the map, we would be playing a totally different game. The Dirtcarvers rapidly reproduce and consume everything in sight, using ambush tactics, burrowing under their prey and surprising them with massive numbers. The spiders were probably the only faction ravenous enough to keep the Dirtcarver numbers at bay, while also not actively wiping them out, since the spiders prefer to capture prey with traps or lying in wait for prey to come to them. In the bottom east of Deepnest, in the lowest part of the territory, you'll find the hot springs and the working tram system. Two structures that scream Hollow Nest influence, which is weird since, like I said before, Deepnest was a deeply isolationist society. Why would they allow a device that would explicitly bring in more outsiders here, but not on the top of the map? Or rather, what was there that prevented the spiders from stopping the tram from being built? The corpse creepers. Although these creatures are wild animals, they are still leagues smarter than your common bug. We know they're intelligent just based on their hunting strategy. Corpse creepers are parasitic monsters. After they kill a creature, they burrow into the body and begin hollowing it out, just enough to make it comfortable and allow them to move around, like a hand in a puppet. They even go so far as to act as that creature would in life. But why would they do something like that? They clearly have the physical ability to overpower the common husks that make their way into Deepnest. So why and how are they imitating them so perfectly? Let's start with the why. I believe that corpse creepers are actively trying to trick other creatures into letting their guard down. I think their goal was to slip into Hollow Nest and quietly live amongst them, swapping hosts whenever they needed to, but otherwise flying under the radar. Honestly, if the Radiance hadn't started its own infection, then the corpse creepers might have gotten away with it. This also explains why the corpse creepers weren't aggressive enough to stop the tram and hot springs from being built. They didn't want to risk getting caught. And not only that, I believe Nosk is in fact a corpse creeper, or at least related to them in some way. I mean, think about it. They both show up in the exact same area of Deepnest and nowhere else. If my previous theory is true, then they both hunt by tricking their prey into a false sense of security. The only major difference is that Nosk doesn't hide within a body while attacking. But I don't think this is shapeshifting either. Not entirely anyway. I mean, clearly Nosk is able to change its shape and size to a certain degree, but I don't think it can match a creature's image perfectly without some creative help. Have you ever noticed how there are several corpses hanging in Nosk's lair? Have you ever stopped to ask why they're hanging up like that? I can't imagine Nosk put those there as decorations. No, I think Nosk is taking the Corpse Creeper strategy a step further. It's not just hiding in a body, it's custom designing a disguise to fool and lure its prey into its lair, using an amalgamation of previous victims' corpses. Nosk gets the design by reading your mind and creates disguises based on your imagined loved ones. We know this based on the Hunter's Journal entry. But now we know why Nosk never fully reverts back to its true form when shapeshifting. It's because this part is not a part of its body. It's just the disguise. Nosk is just shrinking itself down to fit inside of it. And if we assume Nosk and the Corpse Creepers are in fact related in some way, then we can assume they share similar abilities. We can already see that the Corpse Creepers can modify their victim's appearance in some way by rearranging their bones into protruding bone spikes. And they can change their own size and shape at will too. We even see them do it when they grow their own legs to move the defeated corpse around. But I think that the strangest ability that they might share is that the Corpse Creepers can read minds like Nosk can. Maybe not as well as Nosk, but that might be how they perfectly mimic their victims' habits and blend in so well. I don't know. I'm sure everybody out there has different theories of how these bugs' abilities actually work, but this is just the direction that my brain went in when I was adapting the creatures of Deepnest. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. That being said, this isn't really a lore channel. Let's talk about how I adapted these for D&D. Deep within the caverns of the Underdark stands the Kingdom of Deepnest, or what's left of it. A once great kingdom comprised of intelligent spiders that have fallen to ruin. All that remains now is a distant village, surrounded by hungry beasts and deadly traps. This kingdom was born from the union of two clans, the Weavers that could spin their silken web into powerful spells and sturdy structures, and the Spider tribe, who were fierce warriors and hunters. Led by a powerful queen known as Hera the Beast, she would use her mind to fight her wild instincts that compelled her to hunt and feed on anything that moved, creating laws and order for the betterment of the spiders under her rule. But wild nature is not so easily overcome for a common bug. With time, the ravenous hunger could not be quelled anymore. Lost history. Seeing her kingdom of spiders fall to base instinct, Hera the Beast would make a deal to be given a child of higher birth, one that could overcome the infectious hunger, and lead her kingdom to a new age of prosperity. Scholars know that Hera gave birth to a daughter soon after that, but they do not know what became of the daughter, nor do they know what this higher power asked of Hera in return. All they know is that Hera lays sleeping in her silken castle, and any who dares to approach will be swarmed by hungry spiders. Beasts of hunger. The spiders of Deepnest are unlike any others. Their ravenous hunger is unmatched, yet they mindfully protect and feed their sleeping queen, seemingly waiting for her to awaken one day and return them to prosperity. Their methods of hunting are more sophisticated than one might expect at first glance, creating loose earth with bone spike traps beneath, making disguises out of woven silken cloth and shell masks, and even going so far as to use speech. So if you ever hear a voice cry out from the Underdark, just know that it may just be a spider, luring you into its web. This flavor text is mostly here to inspire adventuring ideas. Feel free to ignore it if it doesn't match your world. Deeplings and Deephunters. Deeplings and Deephunters used to be a part of the Spider tribe, but are nothing more than beasts now, slaves to their own instincts. They mostly live as scavengers, in constant search of their next meal. They tend to stay near to the traps laid out by the distant villagers, hoping to steal a bite before the poor fools are brought back to the village. Though Deeplings and Deephunters never wander too far, something deep within them tells them to remain near to their queen, and protect her from invaders. According to the Hunter's Journal, Deeplings are the infants of Deepnest. They scuttle about in the darkness, learning the layout of their home. This leads me to believe that they are younger Deephunters, considering how similar they are, which is why I chose to group those two together like this. The in-game creatures didn't really give me a lot to work with, since all they do is scuttle back and forth. So here's what I came up with. Deeplings are tiny, unaligned beasts with an armor class of 10, 1d4 -1 hit points, and a speed of 20 feet. Their stats are all terribly low, at a strength score of 3, a dexterity score of 11, a constitution score of 6, an intelligence score of 4, a wisdom score of 9, and a charisma score of 4. They have proficiency in stealth, and they can see in the dark up to 60 feet, so at least they have that going for them. And they earn themselves a challenge rating of 0. They have the spider climb ability, and they can spend their turn biting other creatures. The bite only does 1d4 piercing damage, but there is a small chance for it to poison the creature it bites, potentially paralyzing it it for an hour, if the creature falls to 0 hit points as a result of the attack. Overall, Deeplings are not very impressive, either in Hollow Knight or in D&D. As far as use case is concerned, Deeplings could be used in spider egg sac rooms. Like if the players fail a dex check, the spider sac erupts, spawning a handful of them, leaving the players with a need to deal with them before they run off and get a more dangerous spider. Moving on to the older ones. Deephunters are slightly more interesting than Deeplings, but only slightly. Like Deeplings, they scuttle from one spot to another, but unlike Deeplings, they can actually target creatures that get too close with ranged venom attacks. According to the Hunter's Journal, they crawl along the walls and roofs, spitting burning venom at anything that passes by. They can be hard to spot as they flitter in and out of the darkness. Watch for their glowing eyes. The Dungeons & Dragons Deephunters have an armor class of 13, 2d6 plus 2 hit points, and a speed of 30 feet. They have relatively better stats than Deeplings, with an 8 in strength, a 16 in dexterity, a 12 in constitution, 5 in intelligence, 15 in wisdom, and a 6 in charisma. They have proficiency in stealth and perception, damage resistance to poison, dark vision for 60 feet, and a challenge rating standing tall at a big 1/4. They keep the spider climb ability and get a slightly better bite attack, and they get an extra option for attack in their poison spit action. Deephunters aren't really anything special. Their main use case for a DM is probably as grunts and minions for larger encounters. Have the Deephunters take potshots at the party while they're dealing with a bigger threat, just to divide their attention a little bit. Now, let's talk about the Little Weavers. Nimble spiders that traverse their domain on thin strands of web, often waiting in ambush. They can appear from darkness at any moment. They seem to fly through the air, dancing on invisible strings as they silently stalk their prey. These monsters are one of the more interesting creatures in the game, being that they are the only type of creature that spawns on screen in front of you out of thin air, creating this sense of unease, like nowhere is safe in Deepnest, even when you think you're alone. Little Weavers are clever hunters, and despite giving into their instincts, prioritize unfamiliar prey over other spiders, almost like they're still defending their home from outsiders. The Little Weavers will spin their near-invisible strands of web all around the surrounding area of the distant village, lying in wait for a creature to mistakenly wander in too close. Once their prey has gotten near enough, the Little Weavers will appear from the darkness in small groups, surrounding the poor creature before tearing them apart. Little Weavers are small, unaligned beasts, with an armor class of 15, 5d6 plus 10 hit points, a walking speed of 30, and a unique flying speed of 30 when they are in their territory. They have a strength of 5, a dex of 18, a con of 14, an intelligence of 6, a wisdom of 17, and a charisma of 4. They have proficiency in dexterity saving throws, perception checks, and stealth checks. They have dark vision up to 60 feet and a challenge rating of 1. They have a bunch of spider-related abilities like Spider Climb, Web Sense, and Web Walker. But I also gave them the Cloak of Shadows ability, allowing them to turn invisible while in dim or dark light as an action. And finally, to attack, they have their claws twice per turn. I really think that the Little Weavers are super interesting enemies in Hollow Knight. I just hope I did them some justice. But for our next stat block, we have some of the most interesting NPCs in Hollow Knight. The Distant Villagers. Do not be fooled, for these are no ordinary villagers. Distant Villagers are Spiderkin, members of the long-forgotten Kingdom of Deepnest. For one reason or another, these few have managed to hold on to the fragments of their minds. But as intelligent as they may be, that does not make them friends to outsiders. And what they lack in strength, they more than make up for with cunning. Expert trappers. Using their intelligence, distant villagers surround Deepnest with traps of all kinds, both in defense of their home and so they can have a steady supply of food with minimal danger. If you are one of the sad few to make it to the distant village, you'll find the worst trap of all. Disguised in silken robes and masks from the mask maker themselves, they hide their true form. Using underhanded tactics, the distant villagers may beg for rescue or try to convince you that you've reached some form of safe haven. And if given the chance, they will wrap you in a web cocoon, either to eat you later or offer you to their sleeping queen. She isn't likely to wake from her slumber, but the Stalking Devout in her chamber won't take long to find you, and will happily make use of you. Distant villagers are extremely weak in combat, and are mainly meant to make and be traps for your players. They are medium lawful evil monstrosities. They have an armor class of 10, 2d8 hit points, and 30 feet of movement. They have a strength score of 5, a dexterity of 7, constitution of 11, intelligence of 13, wisdom of 14, and charisma of 15. Despite being so weak in combat that they earned a challenge rating of 0, I thought it was a good idea to make them skilled in other aspects, so I gave them 5 skill proficiencies in deception, persuasion, performance, stealth, and survival. They're one of the few creatures in Deepnest that can speak, their language being common and undercommon. They have all the common spider abilities, and even the ability to trap foes with webbing in a pinch during combat. Otherwise, the only other attack they can use is an ineffective unarmed strike. I think these guys are really good for trying to trick your players, but if it comes to a fight, they're just dead. So those are all of the common weaker spiders of Deepnest. Now for the big ones. The Stalking Devout. Worshippers of Hera the Beast shield themselves with hard-plated foreclaws, then lash out suddenly to cut down their prey. Powerful, well-armored, and fast. These are no mere beasts. Study their movements and watch carefully for an opening. I don't know about you, but these guys were one of the scariest enemies during my first playthrough. Stalking Devout are the personal guardians of Hera the Beast, and are rarely found outside the Beast's den, the resting place of their queen. A Stalking Devout's life is dedicated to the protection of their queen. Of all the spiders in Deepnest, they are the only ones who manage to control their hunger entirely, even going so far as to give a portion of every meal to their sleeping queen. Stalking Devout are patient by nature. In fact, they spend most of their time waiting for an intruder, waiting for their next meal from the distant villagers, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, and waiting for Hera the Beast to awaken. Guardians of the Beast. The Beast's Den is built as a simple maze with passageways just large enough for the Stalking Devout to walk through, with little room to maneuver. Stalking Devout prefer to remain safe while in battle. They will not allow any foes to get behind them. Rather than turning to face where they're moving, they would rather scurry back, keeping their hard-armored mask to their foes. When out in the open, the Stalking Devout will attempt to back into a corner to keep itself safe. That is unless you are threatening their home or Hera herself. The Stalking Devout will do anything to protect what it holds dear. Stalking Devout are large, lawful evil monstrosities, with an armor class of 20, 60-10 plus 24 hit points, and a movement speed of 30 feet. They have a strength score of 20, dex of 17, constitution of 19, intelligence of 9, wisdom of 12, and a charisma score of 4. They're proficient with dexterity and constitution saving throws, as well as perception checks. They also have damage resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks. These guys are tanks, but what's interesting about them is they seem to be a bit more aware than the rest of the enemies in Deepnest. Dream nailing most enemies in Deepnest shows the same dialogue, some basic needs for survival, and their fears, whereas the Stalking Devout show several wants to protect their home, their queen, and their brood. As a result of this, I gave them the ability to speak common and undercommon, even though they never actually speak in the game. I also really wanted to adapt their unique fighting style into D&D, so I added in a little vulnerability to their armor. While attacking, the Stalking Devout armor class drops to 16, and they lose their resistances, allowing creatures to hold their action for a better chance to hit. However, if your players hold their action to attack, it will make it harder for them to avoid getting hit by the Stalking Devout's attack. This is really good for ranged players, but someone's gotta bait out an attack from the creature, and with its multi-attack, it's gonna hurt quite a bit. And now it's time for the last member of the distant village. Or should I say ex-member, since she was banished long ago. That's right, we're talking about Midwife. Midwife is an insane member of the spider tribe. She was once a worshipper of Hera the Beast, but now she is a slave to her hunger. Having been banished for an unspecified crime, she often hides in secluded spots just outside of the distant village, trying to lure in unsuspecting travelers with false promises or cries for help. But unlike the other spiders, Midwife has no qualms feasting on the descendants of her old kingdom, as long as she can satiate her hunger. Maddening hunger. Midwife is one of the oldest, if not the oldest living member of the spider tribe, and still remembers the history of her people. On the rare occasion where she finds someone after she's done eating, she may start up a conversation with the passerby, allowing her to hold a relatively normal conversation, only for the hunger to abruptly return within a few short minutes, causing her to attack. But for brief moments, perhaps, there is hope that she can be saved from it and be brought back to sanity. Or perhaps that's just what she wants you to think. So Midwife isn't exactly an enemy in Hollow Knight. It's true that she can and will attack you after she talks to you, but she always immediately runs away afterward. And if you return to her later, she'll even apologize before doing it all over again. It's hard to say whether she's genuinely insane and doesn't mean to succumb to her hunger, or if she's simply luring you in for her next meal. And when you dream nail her, it doesn't become more clear either. She becomes aware that you're trying to read her mind and even attempts to push you out. In any case, I think she's super interesting and gives off a sort of hag vibe, which is why I wrote her as follows. Midwife is a huge, chaotic, evil beast, with an armor class of 19 and 10d12 plus 20 hit points. Her movement speed is 40 feet and half that while burrowing. She has a strength score of 22, a dexterity score of 18, constitution of 15, intelligence of 15, wisdom 12, and charisma 19. She can add her proficiency bonus to dexterity, constitution, and charisma saving throws, as well as deception, persuasion, insight, stealth, and perception checks. She's immune to being charmed or frightened. She can see in the dark up to 120 feet. She can speak common and undercommon, and has a challenge rating of 8. She has a few interesting abilities too. Naturally, she can use spider climb, but she can also mimic animal sounds and humanoid voices. She has magical resistance, meaning she gets advantage on her spell saves, and I went ahead and gave her some innate spell casting, just for good flavor. She can cast dancing lights, minor illusion, and infestation at will. She can cast either bane or sleep up to 4 times per day, and she can cast hold person and invisibility twice per day. I think these spells are really good for her, since she can use them to trick and trap her prey. But if all else fails, she can always use her melee attacks. Her claws are deadly, but ultimately pretty normal. But her bite, on the other hand, is a whole other story. Her bite attack has a poison effect that if you fail the DC 15 saving throw by 5 or more, in addition to taking the poison damage, you'd also become paralyzed until you can save at the end of your turn. I really just went rogue with the stat block. The game didn't really give me much to work with, so I just went off vibes and ran with it. What do you think? How would you write her? Tell me in the comments. Did I do a good job? I'm really proud of this one. Now, let's talk about how you're supposed to use this faction in your games. Well, I think there's a lot you can do with the Deepnest Kingdom as a whole. Maybe your players are looking for a certain item, and they find out that it's hidden somewhere in Hera's sleeping chamber. So now the adventurers have no choice but to make their way through an underdark dungeon filled with spiders. Or maybe your players are on the run and decide to travel underground so they can avoid a greater threat, and end up stumbling upon Deepnest in their travels. They can turn back and risk getting caught above ground, or they could venture forth into this new unknown web-covered environment filled with predators, tricksters, and traps. In any case, I'm sure you can find a lot to work with here, and we're not even done yet. But before we get on to the last few monsters, I need to do something real quick. Here, could you hold this for a second? Thanks. Now that I have you here, let's talk about this video's small creator shoutout. For the uninitiated, I do shoutouts to small creators every video. As a small creator myself, I know how hard it is to try and find your audience. And that's why this video goes out to Enothe Strife, or Jason for short. If you're watching my videos, then odds are you've also seen a few from these lovely individuals. Some of the biggest names in D&D YouTubing right here. A real Hall of Fame and personal heroes of mine. And this channel, this painfully underrated man, has interviewed all of them. If you're anything like me, then you love getting a behind-the-scenes look at your favorite creators, their inspirations, where their channel names came from, and the origin stories of how they got on YouTube in the first place. Well, that's exactly what Jason's interview series, Heroic Inspiration, and Creative Spark are all about. If you're interested in seeing D&D content creators casually talk about their work, then absolutely go check this out. And if that isn't enough for you, Jason also has a large variety of other D&D content, from personal homebrew rules, where he gives away advice and creations that worked in his games, to D&D topic reviews, where he talks in-depth about his thoughts on other people's work, to D&D builds, where he makes custom class builds with specific goals in mind. I think there's a ton of value you can get from Anothe Strife's channel, especially if you're interested in making your own homebrew and posting it online. I would highly recommend checking out his channel. While you're there, be sure to leave lots of likes and comments for the sake of the algorithm, and be sure to tell him that Rose Knight sent you. I'll leave links to all his stuff in the description below, and a link to my personal favorite video of his in the channel end card. And if you have someone you want me to check out in a future video, head on over to my Discord. Post their info in the small creator shoutout section, and if I like what I see, I'll shout them out in a future video. But with all that being said, back to the show. The Spider Tribe and Weavers of Deepnest are incredibly interesting, but they are far from the only creatures that lurk down here, and each group we find holds unique challenges of their own. Take the Dirtcarver Colonies, for example. Despite being physically the weakest form of life we see here, they more than make up for it with numbers and their own form of ambushing tactics. I'm gonna be honest here, I didn't realize just how much I liked these creatures until I started writing about them. This is the Dirtcarver's page. They easily have more lore than any other creature I wrote today. Apparently, I just have a lot to say about these little guys. Who knew? Dirtcarver Colonies. This monstrous colony of predators is a scourge on any ecosystem. They overwhelm with sheer numbers until they've eaten everything out of existence, only to move on and do it all again. Dirtcarvers get their name from their ability to quickly burrow underneath its unsuspecting prey and ambush them from below. Although it is rare to see one on its own, if you ever do, you can bet that there are dozens, if not hundreds more, just beneath your feet. Born hunters. Dirtcarvers are born with 10 legs, a set of pincers, and an understanding of their role in the colony. Dirtcarvers hunt in large, coordinated packs, ranging in numbers anywhere from 5 to 15 at a time, with a single-minded goal of finding prey they can feed to their monarch. From birth, they can and will hunt everything that isn't a part of the colony. But what's strange about their behavior is that they never eat the prey themselves. Having short lifespans lasting only a few days at most, Dirtcarvers only live to protect and feed the Carver Hatchers. Mobile Colony. Dirtcarver colonies are constantly eating through their food sources, and need to always be on the move for new ones. They never create hives or nests for the colony, but rather they centralize on a colony monarch called a Carver Hatcher. As Dirtcarvers bring food, Carver Hatchers will naturally migrate in the direction that most of the Dirtcarvers are returning from, eagerly leading the colony toward potential prosperity. Not that any amount of food will ever be enough. Carver Hatchers. Carver Hatchers are born into a colony once every 1,000 Dirtcarver births. Though under observation, if the colony's numbers are in decline, the amount of Carver Hatcher births will increase. Carver Hatchers are flying tube-like creatures that barely look related to Dirtcarvers, but nonetheless give birth to hundreds of them per day. They spend most of their time gorging themselves on the prey their Dirtcarvers bring them, and are in a constant state of replenishing the colony. When food supplies start to slow down, the Carver Hatcher will tell the colony that it is time to move on through a pheromone signal. Parents of the colony. Carver Hatcher seems to reproduce asexually. Normally, a Carver Hatcher will conserve its energy and only produce a new Dirtcarver once every 10 minutes or so. But if the Carver Hatcher is in danger, they can choose to ramp up production to an extreme degree, burning through its stored food resources to keep itself safe. Carver Hatchers tend to avoid conflicts when possible, and will even go so far as to fly into the air, or as high as it can go in a closed space, in order to keep out of reach of any attackers, and simply allow the Dirtcarvers to handle the conflict. Colony Monarch. Carver Hatchers are the beating heart of a Dirtcarver colony, and if they are ever all killed, the colony will quickly die off on its own without any ability to reproduce. A single Dirtcarver colony can have between 4 to 6 Carver Hatchers, usually spread out over their territory, but any more than that will naturally split off and create their own colonies. On rare occasions, Carver Hatchers will stay with an oversized colony, creating a super colony led by a Hatcher Empress, a mutated Carver Hatcher with unique abilities. I'm not going to tell you what those unique abilities are, by the way, since that would be stepping out of the bounds of Hollow Knight a bit too much, I think. I wrote that as just a bit of inspiration for your own storytelling. I want to see what you come up with. Stretch your homebrew muscles and have fun with it. That being said, I did intend for Dirt Carvers to be an enemy for relatively low-level adventurers. To that end, Carver Hatchers are large, unaligned aberrations. They have an armor class of 14, 4d10 plus 8 hit points, and a flying speed of 20 feet. Their strength is 16, dexterity is 14, constitution of 15, intelligence of 6, wisdom of 12, and charisma of 7. They are proficient in perception checks, and since they have no eyes and fly everywhere, I gave them blind sight in an area of 30 feet. These really aren't meant for battle, but just to produce more Dirt Carvers, which is why their challenge rating is only 1/2, and their only ability is as the colony monarch. If the Carver Hatcher has eaten in the last hour, it will be able to create 1d4 Dirt Carvers at the start of its turn. The Dirt Carvers land in a spot of the Carver Hatcher's choice that is not already occupied within 10 feet of the Carver Hatcher. I didn't actually write this in, but you can also assume that Dirt Carvers have a certain degree of fall damage negation. That way they don't take too much damage on spawning. Maybe we can say that the first 20 or so hit points worth of fall damage is negated, but ultimately it's the DM's choice of how you want to play that. Moving on. Dirt Carvers are small, unaligned aberrations. With an armor class of 12, 2d6 plus 2 hit points, a movement speed of 30 feet, and a burrowing speed of 20. They have a strength score of 7, a dexterity of 14, constitution 12, intelligence 3, wisdom 9, and charisma 3. They have proficiency in perception as well as tremor sense up to 60 feet, allowing them to easily locate and ambush unsuspecting prey while they're burrowing. These trash mobs have a challenge rating of 1/8 due to their low stats, but ultimately they're designed to be used in large quantities. They have a standing leap ability as well as sunlight sensitivity, and their only attack is a relatively weak bite. So long as you don't get swarmed by these things, you should be fine. As for why you would end up fighting them in the first place, I think that NPCs would hire adventurers to deal with these pests for any number of reasons. They could be eating the farmer's crops or cattle, or even be destabilizing the ground and causing earthquakes with their constant burrowing. In any campaign where your goal is to wipe out a Dirtcarver colony, it should realistically be a non-stop fight from start to finish, where Dirtcarvers are constantly burrowing into the combat zone while your players fight through the hordes to make it to the Carver Hatcher's den. The players don't necessarily need to kill all the Dirtcarvers, but if they leave any Carver Hatchers alive, then the colony could simply replenish itself if given enough time. I really enjoyed writing these things, more than I expected to, honestly, and I hope you find good use for them in your games. Now then, moving on to the last faction, the Corpse Creepers. Corpse Creepers are terrible parasites that wear the corpses of other creatures as both protection and disguises as they feast on their prey's innards. Although they cannot speak, they can passively read the surface thoughts of other creatures, allowing them to live amongst their food source without fear. Corpse Creepers are vulnerable outside of a host body and will do anything to avoid being without one. Once they finish feeding on a creature, they seek out a new victim to inhabit. After they kill their prey, the Corpse Creeper will quickly move from one host to the next in a secluded area, careful not to allow any other creatures to see its true form. Desperate hunters. Whenever a Corpse Creeper is discovered, or if their host is damaged beyond its ability to function, the Corpse Creeper will go into a frenzy. They push the sharpened bone of their victims out as defensive spikes and rip through the dead creature's torso with their elongated limbs, so they can force it to move on their own. This transformation is a last-ditch effort to kill any witnesses and obtain a new, more suitable host before they're discovered. Corpse Creepers are smart enough to know that they'd be hunted if they were ever found out, and instinctually avoid that through ravenously violent means. Corpse Creepers are medium, neutral evil monstrosities, with an armor class of 12, 8d8 plus 16 hit points, and a speed of 30 feet. They have a strength score of 10, a dexterity of 13, a constitution of 12, and intelligence, wisdom, and charisma scores of 16. They are proficient in constitution and wisdom saving throws, as well as deception, persuasion, and stealth checks. They are physically vulnerable to piercing damage, since that's the easiest way to hit their weaker bodies hiding inside of the corpse, and they are resistant to psychic damage due to their innate psychic abilities. They're immune to being charmed, stunned, and paralyzed, and they have dark vision out to 90 feet. They have a challenge rating of 4, and they have the following abilities. Passive mind reading. The Corpse Creeper can read the surface thoughts of any creature it can see within 30 feet of them. sunlight sensitivity. While in sunlight, the Corpse Creeper has disadvantage on attack rolls, as well as wisdom perception checks that rely on sight. Immutable form. The Corpse Creeper is immune to any spell or effect that would alter its form. Shape-shifting parasite. The Corpse Creeper can alter its size and shape to fit into any dead creature that is no larger than medium, and has a challenge rating no higher than half its own. While inhabiting a body, a Corpse Creeper will take on all of the creature's physical stats, and will be able to use any non-magical abilities the creature had in life. If the Corpse Creeper's host is ever reduced to 0 hit points, the Corpse Creeper will spend its next action transforming the body, forcing sharpened bone spikes out of its flesh, and pushing its own legs out of the creature in order to move. Ambusher. In the first round of combat, after transforming, the Corpse Creeper has advantage on attack rolls against creatures it has surprised. Charge. After the Corpse Creeper transforms, if it moves at least 20 feet straight toward a creature and then hits it with a gore attack on the same turn, that target must succeed on a DC 11 strength saving throw or be knocked prone. If the target is prone, the Corpse Creeper can make one claw attack against it as a bonus action. And last but not least, Spider Climb. After the Corpse Creeper transforms, it can climb difficult surfaces, including upside down on ceilings, without needing to make an ability check. Corpse Creepers have a small variety of melee options they can use for actions. But the main danger of these creatures is the fact that they can hide just about anywhere and mimic the abilities of whatever they're inhabiting until they transform, giving them abilities somewhat similar to a druid's, since they gain the physical traits of other creatures, including their extra hit points. I'm also purposefully leaving out their reproductive cycle, since I think it's more interesting to leave that nightmare fuel up to the DMs. But yeah, moving on to our last creature of Deepnest, Nosk. Easily the best setup for a boss fight in all of Hollow Knight. I really love this boss, and I just hope I did it justice. Starting with the lore. No one knows for certain where Nosk came from. Maybe it's the natural life cycle of an ancient Corpse Creeper. Maybe Nosk was born with a mutation, or a vengeful god's divine intervention. Or perhaps Nosk is simply the result of a mad wizard playing with powers they did not understand. No matter how Nosk came to be, it has become the apex predator of Deepnest, and no humanoid nor beast can withstand its everlasting hunger. Psychic horror. Nosk, like the Corpse Creepers, has the innate ability to change its form to fit into any body of its choice. But unlike the Corpse Creepers, Nosk takes its strategy a step further. Instead of using its mind-reading ability to fit in and live amongst their prey, Nosk uses a much more sinister form of hunting. After reading its victim's mind, Nosk uses the knowledge to become an exact copy of the creature's loved ones. Nosk cannot perfectly change its shape, however, so to make up for its imperfection, it uses a dark creativity. It constructs its disguise using the leftover corpses in its lair, cracking bone and tearing flesh until it can get the appearance just right. Unknowable hunter. While its chosen prey is alone, Nosk will attempt to lure them into its lair, cutting off any methods of escape as it does. By the time Nosk reveals their true form and the victim realizes what is happening, it is already too late. As Nosk grows to its true form, it shares none of the same physical vulnerabilities as the common Corpse Creeper. Although for unknown reasons, Nosk will still never discard its face mask in the company of its prey. Perhaps Nosk's Corpse Creeper instinct forces this behavior, or perhaps it's a way of taunting its food before a meal. Nosk is a large, chaotic evil monstrosity with an armor class of 18, 14 D10 plus 56 hit points, and a running and climbing speed of 40 feet. Nosk has a strength of 14, a dex of 22, con of 18, intelligence of 17, wisdom of 16, and charisma of 20. Nosk has several proficiencies including dexterity, constitution, wisdom, and charisma saving throws, as well as deception, stealth, survival, persuasion, and perception checks. Nosk is resistant to acid damage and outright immune to psychic damage, as well as being immune to the charmed, stunned, and paralyzed conditions. They have dark vision up to 90 feet, as well as true sight up to 30 feet, thanks to their improved mind-reading abilities. They have a CR of 12, granting them 8,400 experience upon defeat, and Nosk has the following abilities. Passive mind reading. Nosk can read the thoughts of any creature within 30 feet of them. Sunlight sensitivity. While in sunlight, Nosk has disadvantage on attack rolls as well as wisdom perception checks that rely on sight. Immutable form. Nosk is immune to any spell or effect that would alter its form. Necro Shifter. Using the preserved corpses of previous victims and the knowledge gained from passive deep mind reading, Nosk can recreate the likeness of its target's loved ones from an amalgamation of corpses, which Nosk inhabits to lure prey into their lair. Nosk can create a host body that is no larger than large. If Nosk cannot read a creature's mind, then they will recreate the likeness of the creature themselves. While inhabiting an amalgamation of corpses, Nosk will have a dexterity and strength score of 10, a speed of 30, and 5 total hit points. If their host body is ever reduced to 0 hit points, then Nosk will transform into its normal form, and any excess damage carries over to their normal form. I feel like this ability can be used to great effect to mess with players. Imagine being lost in the Underdark, and suddenly you see your mother out of the corner of your eye, only to be gone a second later. You follow her trail, just missing her along the way, only to end up trapped alone in Nosk's lair. Oh, it's so good. But we're not done yet. Spider Climb. If Nosk is in their normal form, they can climb difficult surfaces, including upside down on ceilings, without needing to make an ability check. Standing Leap. If Nosk is in their normal form, their long jump is up to 30 feet, and their high jump is up to 60 feet, with or without a running start. Ambusher. In the first round of combat after transforming, Nosk has advantage on attack rolls against any creature it has surprised. And finally, Legendary Resistance. If Nosk fails a saving throw, it can choose to succeed instead. Now, those were just all their abilities. Let's see what they can do for their actions. Starting with the Claw attack, Nosk can target any creature within 5 feet with a +10 to hit, dealing 2d6 + 6 slashing damage. Charge. Nosk runs in a 30-foot line, trampling through any objects or creatures that are medium or smaller. Each creature in the line must make a DC 14 strength saving throw, taking 2d10 + 2 bludgeoning damage and falling prone on a failure. On a successful save, they take half damage and do not fall prone. Eruption. Recharging on a 5 or 6 on a d6, Nosk spews out acidic blobs from its body. Each creature within 20 feet of Nosk must make a DC 16 dexterity saving throw, taking 12d6 acid damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. Until the start of Nosk's next turn, the area of effect is considered difficult terrain, and any creature other than Nosk that ends their turn there takes 2d6 acid damage. Frightful Presence. Each creature of Nosk's choice that is within 120 feet of Nosk and aware of it must succeed on a DC 17 Wisdom saving throw, or become frightened for 1 minute. A creature can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on itself on a success. If the creature's saving throw is successful, or if the effect ends for it, the creature is immune to Nosk's Frightful Presence for the next 24 hours. And lastly, we have the multi-attack ability. As an action, Nosk uses Frightful Presence and makes 3 claw attacks. Legendary actions. Nosk can take 3 legendary actions, choosing from the options below. Only 1 legendary action option can be used at a time, and only at the end of another creature's turn. Nosk regains spent legendary actions at the start of their turn. Claw attack. Self-explanatory, Nosk makes a claw attack. Disengaging Leap. Nosk jumps up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space that it can see. Any attacks of opportunity made as a result of this movement are made with disadvantage. And the big one. Acid Rain. With a recharge of 5 or 6 on a d6, and costing 2 legendary actions instead of 1, Nosk leaps up to 60 feet onto the ceiling, and runs 30 feet in a straight line, dropping globs of acid as it goes, then dropping back down to the floor. This is a 5-foot wide, 30-foot long line attack. Any creature below Nosk's line of movement without any overhead cover must make a DC 16 dexterity saving throw, or take 66 acid damage, or half as as much on a successful save. Additionally, any creatures that Nosk lands on will fall prone, taking 4d8 plus 2 bludgeoning damage. On a successful save, you take half damage and do not fall prone. Until the start of Nosk's next turn, the area of effect is considered difficult terrain, and any creatures other than Nosk that ends their turn there takes 2d6 acid damage. I worked really hard on this one to try and adapt each of Nosk's abilities from the game into a form that makes sense in D&D. As a result, Nosk's stat block is a lot bigger than most other creatures, but I do think that it will make for a more interesting fight that way. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. As far as using corpse creepers and Nosk in a campaign, I think they'd make for a really interesting mystery thriller type game. Maybe after uncovering an ancient tomb, the party starts noticing how NPCs are acting strange, only to show up hollowed out in a dark alley a few days later. Maybe one of the party members starts seeing long dead loved ones beckoning them into the dark caves at night. These creatures are bound to make for some spooky gameplay if that's what you're looking for. But if not, that's okay, because I'll have more from the Hunter's Journal soon. And yeah, that's all for now. Oh no. How could I forget? Get down! Mimics the shape of other creatures to lure prey to its lair. In the deepest darkness, there are beasts who wear faces stolen from your memories and pluck at the strings in your heart. Know yourself and stay strong. The Hunter. Winged Nosk is the ultimate form of Nosk. Whether you're using this as a phase 2 or a transformation that the party is attempting to stop, it'll make for a much greater climax to your story. So here are its stats. Winged Nosk is a huge chaotic evil monstrosity with an armor class of 19 d12 plus 76 hit points, a walking speed of 30 feet, and a flying speed of 50. Strength 17, Dexterity 25, Constitution 18, Intelligence 17, Wisdom 16, and Charisma 22. For the most part, Winged Nosk shares all of the same actions and abilities as regular Nosk, except all of Winged Nosk's stats are a little bit higher, which means they're harder to save, and they don't have that sunlight sensitivity anymore. Also, the charge attack is replaced with a swooping charge that basically does the same thing, but for a flying creature. Eruption was replaced by Outbreak, which allows Winged Nosk to spew out acidic blobs from its body in a 60-foot cone. Each creature within that area must make a DC 18 dexterity saving throw, taking 18 d6 acid damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. Until the start of Winged Nosk's next turn, the area of effect is considered difficult terrain, and any creature other than Winged Nosk that end their turn there take 4d6 acid damage. Disengaging Leap is replaced by Summoning Screech, where once per day, Winged Nosk calls for 3d4 corpse creepers. I imagine when this ability is used, some of the corpses lying around Nosk's lair will start to animate with corpse creepers and give your players a little surprise. And finally, Acid Rain is replaced with Acid Downpour. Winged Nosk flies 50 feet in a straight line, dropping globs of acid as it goes. This is a 5-foot wide, 50-foot long line attack. Any creature below Winged Nosk's line of movement without any overhead cover must make a dexterity saving throw, or take 12d6 acid damage, or half as much on a successful save. Until the start of Winged Nosk's next turn, the area of effect is considered difficult terrain, and any creatures other than Winged Nosk that end their turn there take 4d6 acid damage. This stat block is essentially a souped-up Nosk with minor modifications on their abilities, just like the original. And I am so unbelievably proud of how this turned out. As always, you can download all my work absolutely free over on my Kofi store. And if you'd like, you can also make a small donation to the channel there. It would really mean a lot to me and go a really long way. I would love nothing more than to do this professionally one day, and I can't do that without you. I know that this channel only has 3 videos now, but hopefully within the next few years, we'll be able to get there. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, outro noises.